Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to add some awesome flames to your logo using Houdini. I've broken down the process into easy to follow steps, so whether you're new to Houdini or you've been using it for a while, you'll be able to follow along and create something really cool. Create your geometry network and name it whatever you want. I'll just call mine FX. Dive in and create a trace node to bring in our logo. I'll be using the PlayStation logo for this tutorial. I want my logo to be larger, so I'll drop down a transform node and increase it by scale of 4. Next, drop a poly extrude node. Increase the distance and check the output back to close the geometry. Drop down the remesh node and decrease the target size. I want the logo to be more larger, so I'll drop another transform and increase it by 4 again. I'll change the mode to smooth wire shaded to see what the remesh has done. Next, drop down the match size node and set the Y mode to min. This is just to make sure the logo is censored and above the grid plane. That's it for our logo prep. Drop down a null at the end and name it. I'll just call it out geo. Now you can skip this step, but I'll add a fall-off to our fire. Create a mops fall-off object node. Create a sphere. We'll use it to guide our fall-off. Resize it to the size of our logo. In the mops node, I'll increase the radius and animate our sphere. I want it to start from the bottom left to top right. So I'll set a keyframe at first frame. Make sure to check preview follow to see it. I'll position the sphere so it covers all of our logo and create another keyframe in the middle of the timeline. I'll change the sequence to 144 frames. In the follow preview tab, make sure your color is from black to white. Let's add a small noise to our follow. You can play around with the values and noise types to get something that you like. I'll just put in the values that I used previously. Create a point triangle and we'll write a small line of code in here to group our black values. Drop a blast node and select the delete group we created. Now we have a fall-off. You can decrease the remesh target size further to get more high res, but I'll keep it as it is. Let's drop down the camera now. Hold Ctrl and click the camera icon on top. I'll position the camera in the front. Next, drop a peak node and we'll peak it just slightly. Drop a normal node after it and a null. Name it logo. Next up, we will create a scatter node. We will give it 10,000 points. You can give it more, but this works for me. Create a Pyro source node to give our points some attributes. Let's just drop the rest of the nodes for this step so they are ready. Attribute noise and VDB from particles. In the Pyro source node, set the particle separation to 0.02. You can go lower, but I'm fine with this value. Create 3 attributes: fuel, temperature, and velocity. In the attribute noise, Set the mode to multiplicative, signature to one-dimensional, and select the three attributes we created. Delete the CD one because we don't need it. Check the animated noise, and remap the noise from 0 to 2. Now you can play around with these settings to achieve the look you're going for. Feel free to experiment. I'll change the distribution graph like this. Next, I'll change the pulse duration to 0.2 and the element size to 0.1. On the first offset, right-click and copy parameter. Then paste the relative reference of the Y and Z offset. And in the X offset, write at time times 2. Let's see the noise by clicking this icon on top. The fractal type doesn't matter, but I like to keep it hybrid. Enable lattice and gradient warp. I'll change the lattice warp to 0.5 and the frequency to 0.04. The gradient warp is 0.1 and enable minimum in post-process. In the VDB from particles, you want to connect your Pyro source particle separation to your division size. So let's copy parameter and paste relative reference. We want it to be a fog VDB. Create 3-point attributes and name them fuel, temperature, and vel. Create a merge node and connect your source to it. Drop down an object merge and look out for out geo null. Drop down another peak and slightly push it inward. Drop a normal node before it. Create a VDB from polygons node. To stay consistent, connect your Pyro source particle separation to your VDB from polygon voxel size. Change it to a fog VDB and rename it to collision. I'll be using Axiom solver for this, but it should be the same process with the native Pyro solver too. I'll change the division size to 0.05, but I recommend to connect it with the Pyro source. I'll change the solver mode to reflection and click the sourcing tab. You can increase the substeps, but I'll stay at 1 for now. We will increase our temperature, fuel, and velocity to 4. And change our fuel operation to pull. Let's go to the simulation tab now. I'll increase the timescale to 2. I'll set the dissipation to 0.05 and add a small density diffusion of 0.1. I'll set the temperature cooling rate to 0.02 and a little diffusion of 0.01. Let's check the wind, disturbance, turbulence, and confinement. Scroll down and we will edit them there. We want the wind to blow to the right, so I'll edit the wind direction a bit. I also want to enable wind turbulence and set the strength and speed to 2 and increase the swirl size to 1. Let's go to our disturbance next. Change the cutoff field and the control field to temperature. I'll write down the value of 4.4. Next, in our turbulence 1, I'll change the scale field to speed. Increase the speed to 8 and lower the swirl size. Increase the gain and set the control field to speed. In the second turbulence, we want to offset it, so we'll change the noise type. We will use the fuel field for this one. Add a little swirl size and add more gain. And also set the control field to speed. Same with confinement. Let's move to the combustion tab and enable it. We want to ignite our temperature and burn more fuel. Let's add a small inefficiency in the fuel. And we will want a larger temperature emission. Let's cache this with a file cache. Name it whatever you want and make sure you select node name in the drop down here. Let's cache it and we will come back. So here's how it looks. I forgot to clamp the burn by checking the fuel threshold, so make sure not to forget it. Let's drop a null and name it outfire. We will make our embers now. Create a VDB resample. Change it to voxel size only. And we will lower it slightly. Drop a VDB activate to expand our voxels. Drop a blast node and select temperature. Delete non-selected. We will drop another scatter. I don't need these. I will set the density scale to 3 and uncheck relaxed iterations. We will use this to create our embers. Drop down a group expression and we will write a small line in here. Drop a blast and select the group we made. Oh, I forgot to change the group type to points. Create a null before our activate and we'll use it to advect our particles. Create a pop network and connect our points to the first input and null to the second. I'll change the substeps to 2, but you can always do more. Let's drop a gravity node and drop it in the network. If you have any collisions in the scene, you will want to decrease the bounce and the friction. Create the pop advect by volumes. Change it to the second context geometry and update the velocity. We will add just a little bit. In the pop source, change emission type to all points. In the bird tab, we will give it a small life expectancy of 2 and give it some variance. And we don't want to inherit any velocity. Let's create some wind. Create a pop force node. You can play with these settings, but I'll just put in the values that fit my scene. Next, we want a small resistance. Drop a pop drag to our points and give it a small value. Let's drop another pop force and I'll place my old values in here. Let's cache this sim now. Drop a file cache and name it whatever. I'll call it embers. You can delete some of these attributes we won't use, but I kept them. Let's cache this. So here's what we got. Let's continue and make them better. Drop a delete node. Change it to points and the operation to delete by expression. We will write a short line here. This will delete 94% of our points and keep what's left. Drop down the trail node and change the length to 10 and the increment to 0.07. You can control these values depending on how you want them to look. Next, drop an add node. Go to the polygon tab, by group, change it to by attribute, and we'll use our ID attribute. This will connect our points and give them some length. Let's give them some color. Drop a color node. Change the type to ramp from attribute, and I will use the age attribute. Change the color ramp to black and orange. You can adjust the colors here further, but I'll just paste in what I had before. Let's give them an offset. Drop down an attribute VOP and jump inside. Create an add node and an anti-aliased flow noise. Connect the position to P and connect it to our add. And connect the add to P. Right-click the noise, Vex and VOP options and create input parameters. This is just so we can bring everything outside. I will add a small noise, but feel free to experiment. Drop a poly wire after the VOP. The radius is large, as you can see, so I'll bring it down. Let's copy and paste everything for our smaller embers. Let's keep more points. We don't need the trail and the add node. That's all, and we won't need to change anything else here. Let's merge both of them and drop down a null. Call it out embers. That is all for the setup. Let's move on to the shaders. Drop down the material network and name it shaders. Dive inside. I'll be using Redshift to render, so I'll create 4 RS material builders. I'll call them embers, smoke, logo, and fire. Inside the ember shader, delete the standard material and add an RS material. Connect it to the surface. Create an RS color user data and connect it to our emission color in the overall. Select the RS material and increase the emission weight to 1. And that is all for our embers. Let's move to our smoke. Create an RS volume and delete the standard material. Connect the RS volume to the volume input. Decrease the scatter as we don't want a lot of density. Increase the absorption a little and we will give it a small emission. I will use a temperature channel and scale it down. Change it to a black to orange ramp and decrease the temperature to something like 500. You can also offset it a little. Let's go to our logo shader. Again, create an RS material and delete the standard one. Give it a really dark color and increase the reflection roughness. Also, add an emission. Finally, our fire shader. Create an RS volume and connect it to the volume parameters in here. We want to give it half the scatter and a darker tint. I'll increase the absorption as well and give it a little reddish tint. Let's use our temperature for the emission and scale it to something like 60. For the ramp color, you can play around with it to achieve the look you're going for. But this one worked best for me. We want to replace the color mode and use the color ramp for the emission. And that is all for our shaders. Let's hide our geo network and create a new one. I'll call it render fire. I'll copy it 3 more times and call it render embers, render smoke, and render logo. I'll drop a color on them by clicking C. I like to select red from my render networks. Jump into the render fire and create an object merge. We will point it towards the null we made called outFire. And we will assign the material we created to it. Let's repeat the same steps for our embers, smoke, and logo. And everything is now ready to render. I also added 2 simple area lights to make the smoke more visible in the render. Let's switch to our out network and create a redshift render op. Go to the redshift tab and click advanced. You can change the samples here to whatever you need. Go into global tab and disable default light. You can also enable motion blur here, but I'll keep it off for now. I like to lower my GPU memory consumption since I have a weak GPU with not a lot of VRAM. You can also add an AOV for your fog emissions. Go into the AOV manager, click the plus icon and select volume fog emission. This will help you add an exponential glow in post-production. You can rename to whatever you want. I'll keep it as it is. We can now preview the render. Let me just correct the camera angle. Let's open our Redshift render view and launch the render. As you can see, I'm not using ACES on my camera because of a weird Redshift bug. Just select your camera and open the Redshift shelf tab and click on the cam parameters and refresh your render. This will now enable the ACES on the render. You can also add your bloom here inside the Redshift render, but I prefer to do it inside Nuke. And that is how you create a flaming logo animation. I hope you enjoyed my first tutorial and will appreciate to hear any feedback about it. Thanks for watching.